Councillor Dalgety. Councillors, could you stand please for the
Almighty God, as members of the Rangitikei District Council, we give thanks for all the good things of our district and the advantages we enjoy. We pray that you will give us wisdom and guidance as we conduct the affairs of this meeting. We pray for all the communities and the district we represent. Help us to be fair and honest in our discussions, and help us to work together in unity for the welfare of all your people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councillor. So as the council meeting was adjourned, we acknowledged that we have councillors that weren't here yesterday for them to take part in the submission process, deliberation of submissions. They need to be able to assure me that they will have listened to the recordings that were made yesterday from submitters to be part of that process. There are no apologies for today. Just remind councillors around the conflict of interest rules. Sorry?
Brian Carter was in.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. Councillor Brian Carter is an apology for today. Would somebody like to so move? Thank you. Councillor Gordon, Councillor Ash seconded. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. My apologies. Thank you. I would also remind you that today is being recorded. So, for instance, Councillor Carter, he will be in the same boat. He needs to assure me that he has listened to a full, unabridged recording of today. Councillors, to remind you around the rules of the submission process. So submitters have 10 minutes in which to put their case. That includes question time that they have. It's all part of that 10 minutes. Councillors, you can ask questions of the submitters. The submitters can't ask questions of you. And it is not time for you to make statements. Partly because that chews up the time that the submitter has available, but it's just not an appropriate process. Any questions around those rules? No, thank you very much. Well, I'll welcome to the table our first submitter for today, Brad Cassidy from Sport Manawatu. Brad, you will have heard the explanation around time. There is a clock that you can keep track of there. I have one down the other end of the room. We do need to keep people reasonably closely to time. The time is yours.
Yes, so thank you for the opportunity, councillors and staff, to see you. Good to see you again. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to present today. There are two aspects, obviously, to our submission. One was supporting the council's approach to the facility upgrade of the Taihepe grandstand. You'll see our point in there, and I'm obviously happy to answer questions relating to that project specifically. The second part, and probably more pertinent, is relating to the implementation plan MOU of the Regional Sport Facility Plan. For those that are not aware of the process, this document was developed in 2000 and signed off, endorsed by the 7 councils that include yourself, Ruapehu, Whanganui, Manawatu District, City, Tararua and Horowhenua, as a leading document to determine regional facilities. But in addition to that, it was about understanding what assets we had. So it was taking sport facilities specifically from a network perspective, identifying where our gaps were. But I think really importantly is understanding a decision-making process and then investment decisions alongside that to determine justification for those proposed developments when indeed they surfaced. At that time, there were no proposals for new regional developments, but there were several recommendations from that plan that required coordination, and as such, Sport 1 or 2 in its position is pulling that plan together. We're responsible for delivering on those recommendations, part of which was to seek ongoing investment from TAs to support my role. So my role is 0.5, spaces and places, and at the moment I'm heavily placed to the south, if you want, of a better word, for our 7 TAs. And you might ask, well, why now? It's probably taken about that long just to keep our other partners, stakeholders to a position where we can understand the value of the decision-making process, and also how we determine investment alongside. So the MOU that has been presented to you is, in essence, a process that we're hoping to achieve a partnership with this council, in addition to the existing partnerships that we have with Sport Whanganui. Now, Sport Whanganui, and I know that they are a key strategic player within this boundary, but also across the work that we do. So whilst we're talking about facilities, that's the easy part. Actually, what's critical is when we're looking at access and opportunities for communities that are most vulnerable or do not have access to be physically active, it's the stuff that happens on the ground that is the most important part of this. And that's where Sport Whanganui in its position provides a key role. My role overall is to coordinate the priorities and deliver on the recommendations that's agreed by each of the councils and their representative. I would like to acknowledge the work of officers from this council who have been committed to roles and responsibilities as part of the steering group that's been in place since this plan's inception, and that is Gayleen Prince. I can't pronounce the woman's name, Sonja, and then more recently, Nadia Gower. But as you can appreciate, those officers have multiple hats, and this is where investment into this MOU would be valuable to those individuals and to this council, and that we're ideally making sure that we have got the right decisions, we've got the evidence to support communities that are in need of support. And where this really comes into play is around funding, and that's external funding. Our funders regionally and nationally want to see that we have done our homework, and if we're front-facing projects that are undercooked, effectively that red flags us from a regional perspective. So that's why it's imperative that I've got to do my job, and that's to get everyone on the same page. And that might take time, but first and foremost is in our view, is the relationship. So in a nutshell, there's only probably one anomaly that I will highlight within the request, and that was the contribution, and I've undercooked it. I haven't included my 20%. So I think what I have put in there, well, what I've outlined is 2872, but what it should read is 3339, and that's just based on the population percentages across the 7 TAs. I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to tackle easy questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Brad.
I was going to raise the anomaly in those two figures, so I'm glad you cleared that up, but essentially you're asking us to be, apart from the money, to be a signatory and to provide a representative.
Absolutely, yeah. Adopting that or seeing the decision-making framework is an endorsement of this council.
Thank you. Councillor Belsham, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad, for your presentation. Great work. I'm just asking a question, so you've clarified that anomaly about the figure.
Yeah.
But also a statement underneath that talks about us committing a representative to your steering group.
Yes.
And it looks like there's been an anomaly there, noting that the Ruapehu District Council Chief Executive will appoint that.
Yeah, sorry,
that
should be the Rangatira.
It should be the Rangatira.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Apologies.
Right.
Yeah. So each TA appoints its own representative,
Right. Okay.
and in the past that has been a council officer overseeing facility developments, either community facility advisor or manager. But there's various stakeholders for that.
That's fine. That clarifies that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have questions, Councillor Rakawa, Councillor Gordon, Councillor McLeod.
I'm not sure, but I might have a conflict of interest with this particular proposal because of where I work in He Waranga post-summer contract that we hold, which is a regional sports taumatakaro program, and I align the education stuff to them.
Deal with the conflict of interest when we come to this, to the deliberation stage for
Okay.
this. Thank you for noting that.
Thank you.
Staff, can you note that, please? Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, my question is, what sort of capacity do you have in terms of detailed design when it comes to new build? Is that part of the space that you're seeing?
Yeah, so what I do is, because I'm fortunate that I oversee effectively projects across 7 TAs, and so we have, our role is to coordinate and identify specialists that are well suited to support the development of feasibility or business cases. So my role, I can't get into the weeds of it. I'm almost like an independent assessor of projects to remain impartial. But yeah, you, for instance, this council might have a proposed development it's looking at. We'd provide 3 different parties that then, if you are seeking either, if you're going out to tender, or depending on whether or not you've got track record or past history with a particular consultant, would support the facilitation of that work.
Councillor Dalgety, Councillor Wilson, I suspect after that we'll be out of time. Councillor Dalgety.
Thank you, Brad. I enjoyed reading your submission. Just interested in the term that you've got there is from 1st July 2000 until 30th of June 2001, representing 3 years. So I just wondered, where are we in this term?
Sure.
And
so, and that's a good question. So initially, when this first took off, when it was in its adoption phase, some councils, this council being included, didn't adopt it at the time, the process. And so what happened is we basically worked on those councils who adopted the framework. That kicked off from about 2019, 2020. The idea is that it would roll over every 3 years to align to LTPs, and then it would be reviewed, and then subsequent, the council would review the outcomes that we agreed, whether or not they were achieved, and then subsequent, you had the choice of saying yes, or continue to invest, or no, we don't see any value in it. So we're pretty much starting from 2021 through to 2024, 3-year term with annual review.
thank you. I say we have done
Yes, sorry.
in this existing MOU. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Mindful of time, Your Worship. Brad, just one quick question here. So you've got here in the funding contributed valued, you've got Whanganui District Council to be confirmed. I'm just a little bit unsure about where this relationship between Sport Whanganui and this is. Where does this actually sit? Do you become the overarching owner of the whole thing?
Correct. So our role, so we're funded through Sport NZ to oversee this particular area, and so Sport Whanganui has its own relationship with Whanganui District Council, and they also have a sport facility plan. So part and parcel of, and that came about prior to this plan being developed. The other 6 TAs didn't have plans associated with decisions, facility decisions. So we would be working alongside, and we've proposed in our new investment plan with Sport NZ that it becomes a shared leadership role with the likes of Whanganui District Council, because when we're talking about regional sport facilities, they still need to be considered alongside our regional partners. Is that? I'm not sure whether I've clarified that.
So this is instead of that, sorry.
In addition, yeah. So they've got their plan, and this is what I would call an umbrella we're not trying to tell them what to do, but when it comes to regional facilities, everything sort of comes through this portal. I don't want to say gatekeeper.
Thank you very much. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Brad, for presenting. I also acknowledge and thank you for acknowledging our staff and the relationship there. That's a nice touch.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you
very much for your
You know
time.
the process that we will need to go through. And of course, we will come back subsequently and give you.
Thank you. And good luck with the rest of the LTP.
Thank you very much.
Golden.
The next submitter we have Mr. Carline. Greg, welcome to the hot seat. Greg, you understand the rules around process?
Thank you. I understand them. It doesn't mean I'll necessarily follow them, but I'll do my very best, Your Worship.
Don't forget to challenge me already. We'll see how we go.
So look, I'm going to do my best to stay inside my 40 minutes. So we've got a lot to cover in that time. But it's really a fantastic opportunity to be with you. I'm the pretty face of the Tutanui Stream Restoration Society, but Marie Gurney here, she is the brains, and she does the vast majority of the work. And we've got her here for any tricky questions. So I'll start by showing you some of what we've been up to up there with your team. And I really do want to acknowledge the work of the District Council team. We've come a long way in a very short time. So these are the reservoirs. Can I just have a quick hands up for who's walked around the reservoirs or done anything up there? So the majority of councillors have been there, and it's changing really fast. So it's nice to have you up there. This is really what inspired us. We lived close by, and we were sneaking around the reservoirs every now and again for a walk. We didn't always take a chainsaw with us in those days, but in order to be able to use the site, this is really where we did start. And if you want your kids to leave home and go to university and live in another town, get them involved in your track building projects, because that's 2 of them and they're no longer in the district. But there's lots of others who will come along for the ride, and that's David Smith, who lives on the boundary. David and a lot of this community have been involved in the work that's been going on up there and the opening of the reservoir. And it was only 2 years ago that this is what you saw when you came up to this site. You know, it's a multiple hazard area, and there was no access for the community. So we've come a long way. We built those tracks I showed you, and then the logging started. So we lost the majority of those tracks. And as I said, we were in a big community meeting last night talking about the reservoirs, and I was pretty upset when that occurred, and I'm so thrilled it's happened now, because it's allowed us to take a really big next step at that site. And this is pretty well where it ended after logging, and rough tracks reinstated around there. And if we're questioning, can we make a difference at sites like this? This is right over the road from the reservoirs on another site that the Stream Society, George Death and David Smith and their families worked on. So we started with this community. They took a section of the stream out, and that's where we've got to. That's 3 years, and it makes a difference, and it makes a difference fast, and we're seeing that up at the reservoir itself. So the same planting activity, there's now in excess of 30,000 plants gone in there. Again, the council team did an enormous amount, but I did a bit of a calc, and we've had over 3,000 hours of community time in there over the last 18 months in planting and pest control and other things. So planting is one thing. We talk about the pest killer's smile, and that's Ellen, our daughter, with that smile, holding one of the stoats that are out of there. Marie comes home the same. Kath, I've seen that smile on her face too. And we've got a team of volunteers that last night called our first stoat this week. In fact, they saw it run into the track just yesterday. And so people that work up there, they're so proud to show you these. We've got some in our freezer if you want to see them. I like them gone. Again, we've got a network of 40 odd traps up there, a huge bait program to get rid of possums as well, possums and rats, and it's really successful. This is pretty rudimentary, but we're getting something in the order of 200 to 300 people a week walking around the reservoir. Some people walk it every single day, and we see the same car as we come past to work each day. We had one local principal that did a streak of 50 days walking around there in a row, and it's getting diverse users out of this community. You'll be amazed who piles out of their car and enters the site. This is what it's going to look like in the next few years at that site as our bush cover comes in. We've just finished that track through the bush between the two dams. And again, that's David Smith up there with his arms on his hips. That's a standard stance from him. But honestly, you just have to put the call out in this community. You've seen it recently with the playground development, and it's the same up there. And people come from all over. We've just, again, had support from the council with another, just in excess of 100 tonne of shell rock, and that'll get spread this exact way over the next few weeks so that we can finish the track. We've built a kiosk up there so that people have got a bit of shelter from the rain. That's at the entrance to the site. So that sign you saw at the start, that's how it originally was, and this is where we are 2 years later. It's, again, you know, we've done the best that we can with the resources we've got, but it's kind of time to step that up. So we're really proud of where we're at, but we can go a lot further. And again, you know, you just have to put the call out and the community come. So we replaced all the fencing out the front of the site, and we're doing our best to make it a bit more attractive and welcoming to the community. This is a really interesting experiment. We've got a whiteboard at the front where we fix it up each week, clean all the words off it, and every week that's how it gets filled up. So we've been recording that as we've gone along, and we get amazingly good feedback. So those concerns that council and we might have had at the get-go, will people leave their rubbish? Will they pick up after their dogs? It's just remarkable how respectful and thrilled people are to have the opportunity and how they look after that. The site is largely clean, and you know, we're around there most days. So, and it's incredible who does go there. You wouldn't normally take your donkey and your little tiny horse for a walk around the reservoir, but that was one of last week's. And people are putting this, we got this off Facebook actually, and so people are, it's the strangest sort of combinations of people are out there enjoying this special place. Again, that's the signage we've got at the start of the reservoir now. And over the next year, I've set out in the letter the things that we want to do. And one of them is to get increased signage and acknowledgement of the sort of values of that place when people are there. Water, it's a big issue there. The Tutanui Stream Society is all about the reservoirs, but it's also about restoring the mauri of the Tutanui Stream, which runs to the Rangatiki River. And we've been working with your council team, Marie's on the project working group for the sewage redevelopment for the Marton plant. And it's really important to our community and the 300 odd people that we represent out of the society that we make progress on both getting water back into the Tutanui Stream. This was an abandoned attempt to raft from where we live into Marton after a flood. It's not normally like that, but you know, we sat there with people last night who talked about their experiences of the Tutanui Stream, of fishing, of swimming, of flour mills, of other things on that stream. And we're not saying let's bring that back, but we are saying we'd like to work with council to get a minimum flow into the stream where there's currently none, and get some of that life force back into that very special place. We've got farmers right down that stream doing an incredible job of replanting and fencing it. We've got Forest and Bird in town here who are trying to get us to face back into that stream. And that's what it would look like that today, I dare say, and it looks like that for 8 months a year. So we can change that pretty quickly. It's not going to be a raging river, but it needs to be a viable stream. And again, this was a photo that Marie took up at that site. And
Greg, you will need to be careful of time.
Yes, so this is the last one. So, but just to say this, you know, this special place, these reservoirs, there are a lot of moves up there. It provides an incredible number of opportunities for our community, and we seek your support to sustain that. So I'm not going to read word for word our submission because you've all read it, and I understand you've got the covering letter, but we want to get alongside councillors and staff to address the things I raised in this talk. We really would love to have further support and funding so that we can get people like David and others in the community resourced to do and support their volunteer efforts there. And maybe there's an opportunity beyond this, once you've deliberated, for us to meet with staff and or councillor representatives to talk about what an operational plan for the next year might look like. So that's it for me. I'm sorry, Marie, I've cut off your time.
I'm going to allow just 2 or 3 minutes for questions. Are there questions from councillors? Councillor Lambert, followed by Councillor Gordon, followed by Councillor Ash. Sorry, not Councillor Ash. Councillor Lambert.
You say you've got a plan for a year. Do you have an onward, like a long-term, like a 5-year plan where you want to be, or a 10-year plan, or are you just doing it on a year-by-year basis?
No, we do have a very long-term plan, and Boffin-Miskell did some work with the District Council and the Stream Society a few years ago now. It's time to review that document, and we've got someone who will be ideal for that. But the steps were set out in that plan, and we've been largely following them. We're way ahead of the mark with public access now. That wasn't planned for another few years, but council has assisted us in sort of getting over that hurdle. So what you're going to see is total bush cover, a full pest management program in place, and I think we'll be moving to develop the track around the top lake in that time. But we just need to be careful about that. There's a lot of landowners to work with. So yeah, we've got a pretty clear plan.
Councillor Gordon.
Greg, my question is, do you have a template for volunteer interaction and management of them in a public space like this, where you've got volunteers and council staff having to interact and work together?
Yeah, well, about 12 or so months ago, there were council staff up there very regularly, and Marie was working with them. So our volunteer team and council staff were, hand in hand. That's dropped off a little bit as the council day-to-day role has, but we've been talking with Arno and the rest of the council team about having a memorandum of understanding in place. So there's some formality around the work that we do, and looking at the experiences of other community groups that are doing volunteer work in public spaces. So it's not just the safety of us as volunteers, and we feel perfectly competent and capable up there, but it's when there are 200 or 300 people a day there, we need to make sure that the way we operate machinery or do other things is sensitive to that, and it's been wonderful to this point. But I think it's one of those things that we will be tidying up with time.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, I get your
It's been
question.
answered, thank you.
You've been answered.
Fine.
Thank you very much. Greg, Murray, thank you very much. And on behalf of council, we thank you as the partnership has unveiled within this entire program. It's been an absolute credit to you and the organisation. We look forward to deliberations and being able to come have the conversation further.
Yeah, it feels a bit like speed dating, doesn't it? But whatever that feels like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
The next submitter we have Jocelyn Hunt, page 91 in your submissions. Jocelyn, if you'd like to take a seat. Jocelyn, the rules around submissions are you have 10 minutes in which to engage with council. That includes question time from councillors. How you use that 10 minutes is up to you. Councillors can ask questions of you. You can't ask questions directly of councillors. Jocelyn, the time is yours. Councillor.
So I live in what was community housing and is now pensioner flats on Wellington Road, next to the historic village and the War Memorial Hall. The name of the street that goes down to the stream is called Cobbicane Avenue. At present, and for I don't know how many years, because I've only been a Marton for 3, it's a dirt track. There's 22 units on Cobbicane, and I'd like to know why we're living on a dirt track. The next street along, next to the ambulance hall, where the Scottish hall is, there's only 4 houses. They seem to have a sealed road, gutters, footpaths, and yet where there's a block of 6, a block of 8, and then another block of 8, and it's a dirt track. And every 2 weeks, the council are coming along and filling in the potholes. In summer, I can't have my kitchen window open or my bathroom window open because every time a car goes past, all the dust flies in every single day, and just run my finger like this along my TV, my microwave, my coffee table, everything, and it's thick with dust. It's like pave Cobbicane Avenue, 22 people minimum live on it. So why are we living on a dirt track? Is it in the long-term plan? If not, can we put it there?
Thank you. So, Jocelyn, are you happy to take questions from councillors?
Perfectly.
Councillors?
I've got one quick one. So your submission, Jocelyn, is singularly by yourself, or is it as a collective of the residents that have
I
done it?
could do it either way, whichever would suit
This
you.
current one is a submission singularly by yourself, isn't it?
Correct. But if I took a petition around, everybody would sign it. There's no car parking.
No, I was just checking that.
And now that we have a new playground, there's even less car parking. And now when there's things on at the hall, there's even less car parking. Sometimes people just block me in and I can't get in or out of my own place. Like when there's the shearing or a funeral or something else at the hall. Everybody wants to park under the big oak tree. Well, there's a big no-no because that big oak tree leaves sticky black sap all over my car. So I get to park in the hot sun or under the oak tree and get big. I know it's a beautiful big oak tree and I don't want them cut down, but there's room for angle parking whole way along there. We don't need a grass green strip from that wall to that wall. There's heaps of room for parking. The playground's now taken up heaps more parking that was used by the hall. Now that the playground is there, you're blocked off between the hall and the playground because for some reason the playground doesn't have a child-proof fence. So there's cones blocking each end. So now we have even more traffic going up and down our dirt track.
Thank you. A question from me.
There's only one lamppost will need moving. I counted it on the way out today. And that just runs power to the historic little stable building. So I don't think it's a major.
Thank you very much. Just a question from me. So in terms of the LTP, you're requesting sealing of the road and you're requesting car parking facilities as well?
That would be wonderful.
So that staff and councillors understand the request. Any further questions from councillors? No. Well, Jocelyn, thank you very much. In terms of process from here, councillors will listen to all the submissions, including consideration of all the written submissions. We will then go into a deliberation stage around what we can do and can't do. We are required to formally reply to you, so that has to happen, and we'll see where it goes.
Lovely, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Don't let me be the one to say I told you so when the first kid gets run over at the playground.
So we've had a submission withdrawn from submission with regard to the Ratana playground. Sorry, we haven't had the submission withdrawn. We've had the speaking to it withdrawn. So the submission will stay in place. Our next submitter. Do we have a submitter here? No, so we will wait. We don't adjourn. We just wait.
Do you want me to read Ray Winton's? She's due up at 11:05 and I've got what she's asked me to read.
It's been withdrawn.
Sorry?
I understand that that's the speaking rights of that submitter has been withdrawn. So staff has advised me that submitter now does not wish to speak.
Society houses that seal there, so it's so the road she's to the road is the next one along, which is mostly as a driveway for those councils. Yes, it's actually on the web.
I was thinking that it is
The staff.
not guilty.
Unless Ray was confirmed with me that.
That is on.
Sure, at our time.
We've talked about it. Certainly had a discussion.
It's on your. Yes.
As in both on the plan.
I've seen them where they're at.
Yeah. Are you worried about the notice thing?
There are actually children.
Yeah, it's just a tripping it. Yeah, even behind them, more. And they had two coma beans, kids. Going back because it was a cousin just packaged video.
Councillors, but Carolyn, you have a submission under your name to make. Are you happy to make your submission now?
Yeah, allowing that, I've just texted Raywin to ask if I can talk to her, to alert her that her ability to talk, so to speak, because she's got to be in Palmerston North for work.
Can we just concentrate first of all on your submission? If you're, so in terms of timing, are you happy to do that?
Yeah.
So councillors, we'll move to deal with the submission from Carolyn Bates. This is submission 165, page 127.
Since we've had more people arrive, do you still want me to do mine?
Yes, please.
Right. The thing is, it's all who's speaking when.
So Karen, the same, you've heard the rules around process in terms of time.
Yeah.
So Carolyn, welcome council. You know the rules, you understand, and you've been through this before. So how you use that 10 minutes is up to you. Fire ahead.
I'm going to give you my last note point first about consultation, which is a term that regularly is used in council communications, but I struggle with the use of communication that to me fails regularly coming out of council. That said, the staff do their darndest generally to help when queries are put to them. I think it's good that the council meetings are recorded, and I wondered whether today's was going to be recorded as well. I think it's great that the council are trying to improve their communications, but I do think everybody still needs to go on a basic marketing course to get a grasp to identify a target audience and how you're going to sell things like the long-term plan when you didn't have any hard copies of documents. I just despaired. I mean, I was heartened hearing Greg's submission of how well he's dealing with council when I struggle with the lack of information that comes out regularly. Anyway, my thought is a better way of communication with the people who actually pay your wages would be a good start, if nothing else. Anyway, back to my beginnings. So on the Wi-Fi, I see on my submission, my comment hadn't been put in. I thought I'd put in something like, why only some locations in the district? Why not the whole district? It smacks to me of discrimination, for the want of a seemingly popular term these days. I also struggle to see how Wi-Fi is deemed to be more important than the necessities of life, as in fixing the appalling drinking water in Marton and local area. Moving on to the Thai Happy Grandstand, I read that and thought, how much longer is council going to talk about doing things before they actually get on and do something? Moving along to economic development. I thought that council were moving away from housing, but I'm thinking maybe I've missed something in not keeping my finger so tightly more recently on documentation coming out of this wonderful building. To read that, there's a suggestion to develop a district management plan. I thought, God, another plan? You've got annual plans, long-term plans. You must have a marketing plan, because at least I see things in the district monitor every so often. Waste plans, infrastructure plans. I'm thinking, how many more plans have you got to have before actually things get done? And what I hear, wearing one of my other hats, as in the community committee, the number of local residents who struggle to see the council actually doing things. Anyway, moving along, employing a, partnering with Mary. My thought was, isn't that why you employed a Mary liaison officer? Or again, did I miss something in that? I wondered about the suggestion of expanding a hark year. I looked at that and thought, how long is it going to take before things are done before they're needed? I figured that the time it's taken this council to do all sorts of different things, a hark year was probably going to be closed by the time the necessary infrastructure and housing is in place. I feel like all I've done here is come and gripe. Wasn't meant to be that way. Anyway. The event sponsorship scheme funding. I thought of the throwing the money at the event sponsorship scheme is good, but it seemed to me as a single item when I thought about it, that there should be more funding for not just events, but for initiatives and the grant scheme through community boards and committees. And that's the end of my rant, basically.
Thank you. Are you happy to take questions from councillors?
Oh, yes.
Other questions from councillors? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Mrs. Bates, for your submission. I'd ask on your key choice around the Wi-Fi. From what you said, are you saying that in fact it should be the whole district that has Wi-Fi?
I think if you're going to do Wi-Fi, why not the whole district? But I do think that comes way down the list of priorities to things like improving the necessities of life, as in having decent drinking water.
Councillor Gordon.
Carolyn, what mechanisms would you prefer to see an upgraded communication suite take?
You know, what do you specifically want to see as ratepayer?
I'm mindful that we have a good cross-section of people in the district, that we've got many people who have computers, but we also have many people who, for various reasons, don't. Letterbox drops. I'm not sure what has been done and the subsequent analysis of how successful such things have been, but I constantly hear things that, oh, I didn't know this, that and the other, and I go, but actually, didn't you read it in the paper? Haven't you looked at it on the council website? Haven't you talked to various people? And I get a response of, no, I didn't know I could do that. So I don't think I'm the best person to say this is how you should be doing it, because I appreciate it's a challenge with so many people to get the right message in front of the right people at the right time in a format that they're going to take on board.
Thank you. Any further questions from councillors? Well, Karen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your submission, and we'll respond after deliberation. Thank you. We'll now move to submitter number 154. This is the Living Hope Church. And please, you're welcome to take, it'd be great to see you. You're welcome to take the chairs at the end of the
Sorry. What are you doing for?
Thank you very, very much for hearing us submission. In terms of the rules around this, you have 10 minutes in which to plead your case. That 10 minutes includes questions that may be asked of you by councillors. How you use that 10 minutes is your turn. Do you understand the rules? And who's speaking? Sorry, I don't know your name.
My name is Mary Lucky.
Sorry?
Mary Lucky.
Thank you. The time is yours.
Hello, everyone. Warm greetings to you all. My name is Mary Lucky, and this is Tinosi Seal Tofa. We come here on behalf of our church congregation, our community, family, and friends. We have handouts, so that's okay. We have 4. So we are working together with the Dips of Internal Affairs to support our group's delivery into the community. So we are looking at the community bowling building on Wellington Street, and we want to buy this building for our, not only to have it based for our church services, but we want to make this place a home for everyone. And as you can see on this paper, we have our vision and how we deliver our vision. And we want this building to not only cater for ourselves, but to open it for the wider community. And we want to run all these great opportunities open for everyone in the community. So that's why we are here to seek for grants, sponsorships, financial supports to help us move forward and to have this environment to open for anyone in this community.
Are you happy to take questions? Thank you very much, and I'm well aware of this opportunity that is sitting in front of you. So just a couple of clarifications. First of all, you are, as part of the long-term plan, requesting financial assistance from council. What sort of level of financial request are you wanting to make? Is it a loan? Is it a donation or cash? And if it is cash, what sort of value are you looking for?
We're asking for donations, any financial support that we can get.
Okay. And you're not willing to put a figure on that? $200,000. Okay. Councillor Belsham?
Thank you for your submission. Thanks for coming along, ladies. Have you got any funding to date towards this purchase of the building?
Yes, we do. We actually have our own church congregation accounts. We actually have some funding in there.
Can I ask how much you've got towards it?
About 100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Just understanding, what is the value of the building? How much is the building?
300,000.
300,000.
Sorry, just in terms of the recording may not have picked that up. You're saying $300,000.
300,000.
Thank you. Councillor Hero?
Kia ora, Morena. Can I just ask what the size of your congregation is?
More than 100, including children. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor.
Morena tino. These programs that you are going to deliver, do you have the plans made up for them and the people to deliver them?
That's why we want this place to ourselves, not only to ourselves, but to open it. And where we have the qualified people, but it doesn't have to be only qualified people. We can have this opportunity for students that are studying, or for them to take the opportunity to work with young people, work with anyone in the community. Hope that answers your question.
Kia ora.
Question from me. You're asking for up to, I know that you've said you'd take any donation, but up to a sizable amount of money. Would you consider a loan made by council?
Yes, I think that.
And the next question from me, have you spoken to council staff around whether in terms of compliance, whether you could hold that number of people and as a congregation within the building, just making sure that you're going to comply with district plan rules? Have you talked to staff about that? Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Gordon, Councillor Belsham, Councillor Gordon.
Yes, thank you. My question is, have you considered employing a professional fundraiser to seek funding from various trusts and other bodies that do give out money every year?
Not yet. I mean, that's why we're here just as a starting point. And then we'll look forward to what other opportunities out there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Belsham.
Thank you. Just another question. Do you have support from all of the Pacifica community groups? So rather than just one aspect of your AOG, you've got support from all of the other.
Yes, definitely.
Pacifica community.
Even though if they don't know that we're here, I mean, Pacific people, we have that heart-to-heart support. So whether they do know we're here, I'm sure they will support us. Yeah. And because we're opening to everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to make sure there's no confusion around the name. We have a community organisation that is looking to move into community housing called the Living Hope Church. Are they part and parcel of this, or are you separate to that?
So Pacifica Community Valley, that's the title of this building, but it's under Living Hope Samoan AOG. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dalgety.
Just for clarity, so that will the bowling club still, will they be able to keep using this building?
Oh yeah, so when we do hopefully achieve this goal of ours in our vision, it's, as you can see on the presentation, there's opportunities specific on Highridge, so it's
you.
a place
Okay.
for
Yeah.
everyone. And they can hire, they can just whatever they need.
Further question, councillor Ash.
Has there been, thank you so much for coming along today, really good to see you. Has there been a conversation with the owners of the building about you using the building in the lead up to the potential purchase of the building? So like already a joint use of the building?
Richard White, yes, we had our pastor and wife had a conversation around using this hall and to open it and have as many opportunities to use not only for church, but yeah, wider
So
opportunities, yeah.
prior to the purchase.
Any further questions? Thank you very much. Is it Farfete? Is that? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Please pass on our warmest wishes to your congregation and to the pastor within. We will come back to you with the appropriate time around an answer with regard to your request. And I did meet with Richard the other day. I'll talk to you about that later. The next submitter we have submission number 152. This is from the Kawitiata Residents Committee, found on page 96. And welcome Pete and Joe to the chair. Welcome again. So the rules around this, you have 10 minutes in which to speak. That includes question time from councillors. You can't question councillors, they can question you. Do you understand the process? You can take it as read. There are a number of images within the presentation, etc., that we councillors have taken the time to read them. So, and just some advice: you are being recorded today, so that we can go back and refer back to what you've said. And we have one councillor not present, Councillor Carter, and so that he will be able to take part of the deliberation, provided that he listens to all of everything that has been said for the day. So the time is yours. Thanks, Joe.
Morena koutou, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. We'd like to talk to the additional aspects that we've put in our submission, not against particularly the questions that were asked for some responses. So this is around the things that are important to us as a community. Andy challenged us when he came out for the pre-consultation to have a think about those things that are important to us as a community. So I've got a presentation up on here, which is we can kind of run through, but essentially, so out at Kawitiata, we are at the end of the Turakina Valley. There's about 116 houses out there, and about 60% of those are full-time residents out there. Yeah, is that working for you guys? Okay. Oh, you've got it. Oh, you've got it. Okay. So essentially, I want to run through these priorities. So the first one here is increasing toilet facilities. So we've had a discussion that's, that we've had with the campground people out that look after, campground custodians. The current state of those facilities are very poor, and there's some work that's going to happen in the winter of this year to tidy the facilities up, but essentially we don't have enough toilets out there. So that's the only facility that copes both for the campground and also for visitors that we have out at the beach, and the Te Araroa trail walkers that come through as well. So what we like to do is to consider additional toilets, either in the same facilities or an additional toilet block in the park. Cell phone and broadband coverage is fairly poor out there, and that impacts on people being able to actually live out there if they're on an on-call kind of basis with their jobs. Firms can't implement their full protocols of being able to contact their volunteers because we haven't got reliable cell phone coverage. And so in our submission, we've talked about that being a priority above the free Wi-Fi in the towns, is to improve that out in the communities. As a medium priority, we'd like to have the children's playground out there upgraded. We're cycling through a period where we're getting a lot more older children in the village, and some of the things that they would be keen to see is things around a BMX track or a skateboard park and things like that. So it'd be great to be able to keep our rangatahi in the village. And undergrounding of power lines. So this is a low priority, but we just have got this on our 10-year view. Part of the village has got underground of power lines, and we certainly see it as obviously it's an aesthetic appeal, but we have quite a few power failures out there because of the salt build-up on the power lines and the maintenance that's required. Fire hazards due to the transformers shorting out and sparking and carrying on. So the one we want to put a bit of time into is around the Kuitiata Recreation Domain Reserve that's out there. So it's approximately 2 hectares, and it was established actually by the Rangitikei County Council back in 1916 and now is administered by RDC. There's a number of natural assets in that reserve that we want to preserve. So we've got a variety of those environments, including a wetland area that we're doing a lot of work in at the moment, dunes, which obviously are very important from a coastal restoration process at the moment, and that kind of first line of defence around climate change. A dune lake, which is we actually called the lagoon out there, which changes over time as to whether it's landlocked or not, but currently it's landlocked, and a river mouth that shifts about 4 or 5 kilometres depending on where it decides to come out at the time. Great range of biodiversity out there, some plants that are indigenous only to that area, so we're looking to preserve those, some endangered bird life that's out there, and we've got a pest control program that's been going for 3 years now, and we've seen a big shift in the ground nesting birds out there, and also some endangered invertebrates, including the caterpillar spider, which I'm not too worried about. But anyway. Recreational use, so it gets used by multiple people all the time, obviously accessing for the beach and for fishing. I've got duck shooting there in brackets. We were trying to get that banned out there this year, but we weren't in time to get it gazetted. So we're working with the council on getting that through next year. The Wanganui Summer Program, so they've put it as one of their walks when they come out over that period in January time. And also it's a field trip destination now. So we had the Coastal Restoration Trust Conference recently in Wanganui, and they came out for that, and also Forest and Bird Society have been coming out as well. So what we're looking at is a proposal around a management plan for the domain. So it sits under the Reserves Act that, from my reading of this, requires a management plan. From my understanding, I don't think there's ever been a management plan for it. And the opportunity that we'd like to propose now is that we work with the Rangitikei District Council, the community, Ngāti Apa, and Horizons, and also Earnstraw, who are the owners or have all the forestry requirements out there at the moment, to actually put a management plan in place. You've got a framework for that, which is your Recreational Parks and Reserves Management Plan 2014. So from what I can see around those objectives and policies, we could very much fit it within that. And what we're looking to do is put a number of things that we've been working on over the last little while under that umbrella of that management plan. So one of the areas is around flood management, and Andy's been very involved in conversations between RDC and Horizons and Ngāti Apa around how we better manage the water that comes into that lagoon and needs to be relieved at different times. So we wanted a long-term solution to that problem. And that obviously gets into council infrastructure and can damage that as well. We've got a wastewater sewage pond in the reserve area that needs to be considered from a long-term perspective. The temporary consent of that finishes in 2024. We've got a restoration project on the go at the moment, which is getting some really good support, particularly from the Rangatiki Environmental Group and the land-based training team. Thank you very much to RDC for $3,000 worth of plants this year to get us into a replanting program there, which is fantastic. We've put in here about the potential to rezone the council land that's adjacent to the reserve and whether that could be rezoned into the reserve. It's used very much for learner drivers, people on motorbikes trying to get their way around, horses, horse trekking, those kinds of things. Looking at your housing policy that you've just put out as part of your long-term plan, we can't see that it would meet any of those requirements under emergency social or community housing. So one of the suggestions is to have a look to see whether that could be rezoned. And then the last one is around the freedom camping bylaw. So I understand that that's starting to get some traction nationally, but particularly as a region, we understand that we don't have a bylaw in this district, and we've got some people just doing some work on what that might look like to bring back to council as well. And then I've just on the last page just about the strategic alignment. So we see that most of these things sit very well with your strategic alignment. Some things may be more operational than in your long-term plan, but essentially that's our priorities for our community.
You're happy to take questions? We have a limited time for questions. You brought up fairly wide-ranging view around the future of Koitiata, and when you talk about housing, when you talk about upgrading of power, all of those sorts of things, would you accept that probably fundamentally we have to go to that community and say, what's your future vision? You know, what houses, because there is potentially a papakāinga within the area as well. So I'm wondering if it should be a far bigger discussion with the community as to what the future entails. Would that be fair comment?
Definitely.
Thank you. Questions from councillors. Councillor, we probably won't get it through everybody. I'll go Councillor Wilson, Councillor Hira. I had somebody else if they had Councillor Lambert. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, very, very quickly, mindful of time. The comment about the freedom camping bylaw, as well, that's being circulated and being looked at now. Does the community have a stance one way or the other on that one? I mean, I know it's a quick answer, but a good thing, bad thing?
Not a good thing, because often they are out in the reserve area and they're not self-contained.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hira.
Kia ora, Morena. So my question was around the, as your residents committee, is that you've pointed out these 116 houses and 60% of them have permanent residents. Are all those 60% of those permanent residents part of the your residents committee?
So we've got I think 12 people on the residents committee, and we've got an email circulation to the rest of the community, so they can come to, everyone comes to meetings if they wish to every month.
Those meetings are very popular. Councillor Lambert.
My question is very quickly around the Koitiata Recreation Domain Reserve. Is that a defined area, or because I see like there's pine trees creeping into it and things like that? Like, is there anything being done to it, or is it very much just?
So that's what the wetland restoration project is. Most of that is wetland, and that's what we started 6 months ago. So moving into those wilding pines is one of the things.
Yeah. So, but the boundaries are defined for it.
On there they are, less when you actually look at when you go out there, there's no trees around it, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, look, you folk are kind of ground zero for climate change and sea level rise. Have you thought about that as a community?
And part of the issue we've got at the moment is we're losing all of our 4 dunes because the river is moving across the face of the village and taking the 4 dunes out. Probably the biggest thing is the flooding issue that we've got with the lagoon being landlocked at the moment, and that aspect of how, you know, the sudden downpours and how much water gets into there is probably our main initial concern.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll call it there. Just for your advice, I did submit to Horizons the other day and said that we need a resolution around that. Whose responsibilities there are, etc. Thank you very much for your time. I suspect that we will engage with you as a wider community around because it's such a large scope to your submission. Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Keith, for your time. The next submitter, we have Paul. Paul, welcome to the hot seat. The submission from Paul is down on page 119. Paul, do you understand the rules?
Yes, thank you.
Around the 10 minutes, etc.
Yeah.
The time is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to be talking about the Tai-Happy Grandstand options to invest in its restoration or a new amenities building. So Mayor Andy, members of council, council staff and Rangatiki ratepayers. My name is Paul Marcroft. I'm an architect, a Marton resident since 2007 and am supportive of the idea to invest in the restoration and refitting of the grandstand. I thank you for the opportunity to speak to those options. I first visited the grandstand when I was looking for a place to eat my sandwiches. It was a lovely fine day and I was immediately struck by the charm of the building, its timber structure, its unfussy, honest appearance, and most of all by how well it suited the playing field in front of it. Since then, I've thought more about why it is a very likeable building, and I offer you some brief thoughts on the likeableness of its format and citing its materials, scale and presence. Firstly, the format. The format of the place is that of a sports field, the players, the referees and lines people and the spectators. It is a space for people of all shapes and sizes to come together to express their human character and identity in a physical way, away from the daily grind and the solitude of rural living. This in New Zealand, Aotearoa, is a highly valued culture. In my opinion, the building could not have been positioned better than it has been. The stand faces east of northeast, open to the morning sun, and has its back to the southwest and its right backside cheek to the southeast, and its left cheek splits the prevailing norwesterly airflow to provide shelter to the spectators. Its elevation above the playing field is extremely good, neither too high nor too low, and the slope of its bleachers gives everybody good views across the field. The structure, as you know, is largely timber, from native timbers, probably milled from the Tai-Happy hinterland. Because the structure has endured for roughly 96 years, the timbers used would have been good hardwood members. In some ways, the building memorialises the forests from which those timbers came, and the carbon that was captured by those trees is still being used for a worthy purpose. Timber is a likeable organic material that has many tactile qualities that Kiwis appreciate. Like all building materials, timber requires maintenance, and when it is given some love and attention, the payoff is immediate and rewarding. The scale of the grandstand is smallish, perfectly sized for a small rural town and without pretensions. Unlike larger stadia, an individual sitting in the Tai-Happy grandstand does not become lost in a sea of faces. Many have discussed the historical connection of the grandstand to the town and its significance beyond Tai-Happy to Aotearoa, New Zealand, as a reminder of an egalitarian culture that was deeply rooted in both town and country. Sport is one of the things that Kiwis of all flavours have united behind. Sport is still a focus of local community identity, of celebrating leaders and teams who are prepared to give it a go and to test themselves against their neighbours. However, I'm a little bit uncomfortable framing the development of Memorial Park as either the grandstand or the new amenities building. I understand that budgets have their ceilings and that framing the question in this way encourages the public to discuss and debate the issues. Personally, I like to have my sandwiches and to eat them as well. I think new and old can coexist happily together and can complement each other. In this case, a comprehensive redevelopment of the site should include the things that cannot be fitted into the grandstand and lay out a process of staging the development to achieve as many of the needs as can be. This may mean some sensitively considered additions or adjacent facilities. The nearby toilet block, for instance, could be made a little more likeable. I strongly believe that Taihape's grandstand can be revitalised and given a new lease of life that will not only suit current community needs, but will reflect a level of pride in a special central North Island town. Towns such as Napier and Hastings are now reaping the benefits of identifying likeable, in their case, Art Deco architecture, and investing in their preservation and adaptation for current needs. There is a lot of likeable architecture and bridges and roads in the Rangitikei area. It's pretty easy to identify, but it requires deft and skillful leadership to encourage people to see the rewards that are waiting, to discover the resources, and to unite people to give it a go, to strive for an outcome that locals and visitors to the town will appreciate. So I thank you for your consideration. Mā te ariki, koe e manaki e arahi. May the Lord bless you and guide you. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Paul. Are you happy to take questions from council? Councillors, Councillor O'Carroll first.
Kia ora, Paul, thank you for that. I just read in here, what's involved in a carbon comparison?
Different, if you, for instance, design a building that's made of concrete and steel or some other materials, you can compare the amount of carbon that's embedded in those materials. So it's a way of, and you can also compare that against what's there already.
Good question. First, further questions, Councillor Hira.
All I'd like to say is thank you very much for that, for your submission. It's very good to listen to the positive.
Thank you.
Is
there a question in this, Councillor?
Thank you.
Just reminding councillors around the rules. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Paul, on a lovely presentation. Can I ask, should the Rangitikei District Council invest $1 million in this building, how long do you see its lifetime after such restoration?
Is this the grandstand itself?
The grandstand itself.
I don't know enough about how long it's going to last into the future, assuming it would be maintained, but I guess it could easily last another 50 years. But I mean, it may be that the metals and the fixings might need to be replaced, that sort of thing. So it depends on, it's a little bit about how long it's a piece of string, but certainly I don't think it's going to fade away overnight. It's lasted almost 100 years already. So there's plenty of churches and things around the place where they're over 150 years old now. So yeah, 50 more years I think would be reasonable.
Because there's no other councillors waiting other than me, so long as it's very brief, then I'll go to myself and Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, further to that, sorry, that was without restoration, you think it would?
Without restoration. Well, it might last another 40 years or something as well. I don't know. It's difficult to tell, but I mean, at the moment, the biggest risk will be from arson, I would have thought, than anything else. So that is to me, that's a significant area of where work needs to be done to stop that happening.
Two very quick questions from me. The first one is, are you aware of the new amenities building that has been built?
I have seen some of the material on the website. That's about all really. I don't know much about the history of the, how many meetings we've had and that sort of thing. I can see there's been a process though.
Second question is, have you had a look at the detailed building retention upgrade that has been proposed by a fellow architect? Does
I
it
haven't
meet the
seen-
carbon position that you would want?
I haven't seen that, so I
Thank
can't
you.
comment on it.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Just looking to actually clarify your position on this exactly. So your position is quite simply that you're in favour of the council's position, which is to invest up to $1 million into the preservation of the council. That's
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
the grounds.
that's
That's the basic
That's the
fundamental of
basic,
your.
Yeah.
So that's a yes to that,
That's
irrespective
it's
of anything
very
else.
supportive of that.
Of that concept.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for your time.
I can leave a copy of the little note that I've prepared.
That would be
Yeah, it's really good.
That'd be appreciated, Boston. Thank you very much. Charlotte, I'm presuming that you're going to be doing the submission on behalf of Horizon. We'll take you next. Thank you. So you're probably well used to this process. Welcome back to Chambers. You have 10 minutes, including question time. How you use that time to it. Your presentation is being recorded. So if we have one councillor not present, who will be able to take part in deliberation.
Councillors. Yes, I'm Charlotte Armand. I'm the Policy and Strategy Manager at Horizons Regional Council. Only been there for a few months, but I am here on behalf of Marton. I suppose the key part of our submission today is to make you aware of the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, which is a key focus for Horizons Regional Council. And that introduces the concept of Te Mana Oti. It also introduces a concept for a hierarchy of obligations, which puts the health and well-being of water before those of people and social and economic needs of communities. So we have an extensive implementation program going on at the moment, which involves extensive engagement with tangata whenua and communities. And all that will culminate in a change to one plan by the end of 2024. We'll also take the opportunity at the same time to make any other changes to the one plan that are required at the same time. So really we just wanted to highlight that and ensure that through your LTP you're taking consideration of Te Mana Oti and those obligations, particularly when you're considering your three waters activities. A major concern of the Regional Council is wastewater treatment and ensuring that the health and well-being of water is provided for, because we are aware that there are a number of consents operating on existing use rights and there are some compliance issues. So really just wanted to encourage you to consider that there is adequate provision within the LTP and infrastructure strategies to address those issues. Because with NPSFM, the consenting requirements are only going to become more stringent, and just want you to be aware of that. The only other thing I wanted to highlight was it was great to see that there was acknowledgement of climate change within the LTP, and looking forward to working with you on the joint committee for climate action, and also just to let you know that the regional risk assessment will be being provided later in the year.
Charlotte, you have to take some questions.
Yes, sir.
In terms of where we are with Three Waters infrastructure, and particularly the consenting process. So the Chief Executive and I have met with Horizons and Michael and others around the process of consenting approval and laid out a fairly considerable plan. Are your comments acknowledging that, or are they saying there's further work post that meeting that needs to be completed? Is there a refreshed approach, if you like?
Yeah, just acknowledging that, and also just to highlight that there is still some level of uncertainty in terms of the compliance requirements, I suppose, in terms of meeting the requirements of the NPS FM. And just to make sure, really just to make sure that there is adequate provision in terms of consenting as well as capital works.
Does that indicate a degree of uncertainty in terms of where Horizons is at around the new regulations as well?
Well, this is new for Horizons in terms of our consenting regime, and we're really just at the start of this process and working our way through it. And as I said, we won't actually have a change to one plan until 2024.
Thank you. Take questions from councillors. Councillor Belsham, Councillor Lambert, Councillor Belsham.
Thank you, Charlotte. In the submission under transport, there's encouragement to consider provision of active transport modes when upgrading our roads. Can you just clarify that for me, please?
That's probably related to our emphasis on climate change, and it's something that we're encouraging all district councils to think about, encouraging active transport modes.
So, sorry, give me an example. Cycle lanes, is that specifically that's what you're talking about?
Yeah, any kind of transport that encourages people to get out there in not in cars, that is safe.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gordon, sorry, Councillor Lambert, then Councillor Gordon.
Just over this, where water's health and well-being and water, is there a definitive difference between the two, or is there recognised, like, what's the difference between healthy water and the well-being of water?
It's really an encompassing statement, health and well-being. Te Mana o Te Wai is a concept about that the water itself has mana, and each community needs to define what Te Mana o Te Wai means to them, and we're working through that process with tangata whenua and talking about what mana is for the water within each catchment or freshwater management unit. So that well-being is part of that mana. It brings in all sorts of aspects in terms of water quality. Yeah, it's more of an encompassing statement, health and well-being of the water.
Councillor Gordon.
Yes, my question is around this big picture. With Te Mana o Te Wai coming in, we have old plant and sometimes in difficult geology, and we have this rather inflexible consenting process. Why can we not have a joined up process where we can make incremental change that doesn't necessarily get to the far end point now, but heads in that direction?
I can't really comment on your consenting regime because I'm
talking
not
big picture.
Really across that. But one of the things with the National Policy Statement for Freshwater is that as communities, we're required to identify long-term visions, which could be 30, 50 years out, but we're also required to identify medium short-term visions as well, so that we can take more of a staging approach. If a community says that this is their vision, but it may not be achievable in the time frame and the cost, then we can put in sort of more immediate visions or steps, stages to get towards that long-term vision. That is an opportunity within the NPSFM.
Awesome. Further questions from council?
Just one quick one for me, and Your Worship, it does go back to your question. I just didn't quite get the clarification. When you said there was some uncertainty regarding was uncertainty regarding our long-term plan and our plans with regards to our infrastructure with dealing with our consenting, or was it with uncertainty that with our understanding of what Te Mana o Te Wai was and how that came together? I wasn't quite sure about that.
It was more uncertainty around how stringent the consenting requirements are going to be in the future.
Okay, not so much with what we've got in place.
Yeah, so we are still working through that process. And when we make changes to the one plan, obviously that consenting regime may change in the future to give effect to right. And I'm not totally familiar with everything you have in your LTP to address those, but it was really just to say we would encourage you to give consideration to make sure that there is enough funding in there to deal with both the consenting and the capital works requirements into the future.
Thank you, Charlotte. Acknowledging you and congratulations of coming into this role and acknowledging you've been there for a short time. You will have had the opportunity to listen to the submission of Kawitiata residents. Do you have any comment to make with regard to the horizon sections that they, any advice to us there around the lagoon or anything else?
No, I don't at this stage, but I can go back and take a look at that and get back in touch with you on that one.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for your time. And as I said, congratulations on your new appointment, and we'll be in touch later. Thank you. Councillors, we'll take a break. We need to be seated back to listen to the Zoom call at 11:15. So I'll welcome you back, please, at about 10 o'clock.